28 Days Later was one of those movies that really catapulted, I would say, Cillian Murphy, Danny Boyle into a more mainstream audience, right? And it was one of those movies that you hear is always talked about. Christopher Nolan talks about seeing Cillian Murphy in that film. And it's a movie that has, I would say, spawned the new way to look at zombies. For a while, the whole premise with zombies and everything was mainly focused on the zombies and all of that, right? And then we started to get more of these human stories told. And 28 Days Later, for sure, is one of those. Of course, it spawned the sequel 28 weeks later, a bit after that. So 28 years later is now the latest sequel. So let's give a little bit of insight into 28 Days Later so we can really get into 28 years later. So before we do, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell. We're on the road to 35,000 subscribers, less than 900 to go right now. So super excited to reach that. But let's talk about what exactly the virus was in 28 Days Later. So in Britain, a highly contagious virus that was dubbed Rage Virus was unleashed in Great Britain after an infected chimpanzee was freed from its cage in a laboratory by a group of animal rights activists. So you see this right at the beginning, right? Of course, within seconds of being exposed, the enraged chimp pretty much has the activists succumb to the virus and immediately infect one another. Thus, we see patient zero and the incoming epidemic, as we see that the virus spreads across Great Britain, resulting in societal collapse. And of course, we follow bicycle courier Jim, who was in a coma and then wakes 28 days after the initial outbreak. So you got that little part right there that we see in The Walking Dead also. So as I said, 28 Days Later is a foundation for a ton of zombie and horror films. Now, so filming has wrapped for Danny Boyle's 28 Years Later, which is the sequel to the 28 Weeks Later film, which came after 28 Days Later. We're talking so much about the number 28. So in 28 Weeks Later, we follow a set of other survivors 28 weeks after the whole thing happened in 28 Days Later. And so this whole thing of this anthology type film and everything that followed after each one of them, I thought was an interesting approach. And I'm very curious to see how they want to continue doing these films after 28 years later, which we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, 28 weeks later came a couple of years after 20 Days Later. It wasn't directed by Danny Boyle. It was directed by Juan Carlos Fresnadino and was another screenplay written by a couple of writers. So it wasn't Alex Garland. So this is really Alex Garland and Danny Boyle coming back to the roots. So very excited to see what they're going to do with this one, right? So Ralph Fiennes actually spoke to IndieWire and has also confirmed that the first two movies have been shot and also gave a bit of plot details into what exactly 28 years later could look like. So during the sit down, he told the outlet, Britain is 28 years into this terrible plague of infected people who are violent, rabid humans with a few pockets of uninfected communities, and it centers on a young boy who wants to find a doctor to help his dying mother. He leads his mother through this beautiful northern English terrain, but of course around them, hiding in the forest and hills and woods, are the infected. But he finds a doctor who is a man we think is going to be weird and odd, but is actually a force for good. So that doctor is played by Ralph Fiennes. So Danny Boyle and Alex Garland are reteaming for the 28 Years Later trilogy. Yes, this is going to be a trilogy. And according to the outlet, it says that they are apparently already done with both. So the movie will include Jack O'Connell, Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Aaron Kellyman, and Ralph Fiennes. Cillian Murphy is set to executive produce and reportedly will be returning to star. And Nia DaCosta will be directing the second installment in the trilogy. So Danny's coming to do the first one and Nia DaCosta will do the second one. So we're excited to hear about this, right? And he also, of course, kept saying that it's 3 films of which 2 have been shot. So we're definitely excited about that aspect of it. But overall, this sounds great. I'm excited to see the franchise return. Like I've said, this is one of those franchises that I've said is so important to the horror genre. It's coming up on its 23rd anniversary, I believe, by the time the movie releases. So it's definitely been a long time coming to see them bring this all back. And I'm excited to see what Danny Boyle and Alex Garland have cooked up. I'm I'm also excited to see the second film, which will be directed by Nia Da Costa, because I think she has such an eye, and I really would love to see what she can bring to the horror genre again, as she did with Candyman a couple of years ago. I'm a fan of that Candyman that Nia did, so I'm excited to see what she's going to do with this. But Alex Garland is definitely a writer that I love to see their work be brought to the big screen, and I'm excited to see once again teaming up with Danny Boyle to do that. So let me know what you think, if you're a fan of this idea of a new trilogy. And I'm curious about the 28 years later trilogy now. Will we go into 28 decades later? Of course not, I don't think we'll do that, but I'm very curious to see how this story will continue and unfold, and what the ramifications have been now 28 years later, because in 28 weeks later it was insane how everything was, right? And now we're going to think about that, how does it look 28 years later, which gets me very excited to see what this movie will be. So the film is slated to come out on June 20th, 2025 by Sony Pictures, and we will see. And according to this, the film title for the second film is called 20 Years Later Part 2, The Bone Temple, which I'm just thinking, why does this sound like an Indiana Jones movie right here, right? Like what is going on here? But I'm so excited. We will definitely be watching this movie and seeing where it goes, and I'm excited to see just Cillian Murphy returning to this role that I think he played so well in 28 Days Later, like 20 years later, right? That's crazy, but still excited. Let me know what you think about the film 28 Years Later if you're going to be watching it. I'm excited to see Ralph Fiennes as well. And by the way, I need to go watch that Conclave movie with Ralph Fiennes, because I've heard it's so great, and I have not watched it. I missed it at TIFF, and I missed it again at a screening I was supposed to attend, but I will definitely be trying to get to that. But anyways, let me know your thoughts and opinions. Are you excited for 28 Years Later? Do you enjoy the 28 franchise, or is that a franchise you're not really keen on? I mean, it gave us those fast zombies, which really changed the game up, right? I mean, World War Z was an insane movie that I think has a lot to give to 28 Days Later. But make sure you follow us on our socials. Instagram, we are running a giveaway that will be announced tonight. The winner will be announced on Halloween Day, so that's about a week that you have to enter, and we will be doing the announcement that night. And we got a ton of things coming as well. We got a ton of movies to talk about. We just talked about Venom: The Last Dance, so if you want to check that out, go to our channel right now and check out the latest video we uploaded. But we still got a ton of things on the way, and we're going to be discussing the new Predator movies that also got announced. It's a great time, y'all. It's a great time with movies and announcements, so don't miss out on any of that by subscribing and following us wherever you can. I'll see all of you next time. Stay safe, stay positive.